Hello and welcome to this episode of Comprehending Consciousness. My name is Allie with A. Marie Speaks, and this episode is number 39 already. Cannot believe how many terms and phrases there really are to be introduced, sort of to people who are waking up, to those of us who are new to the conscious community or the new age or whatever you want to call that these days. I have had such a wonderful time making these videos over the last, I don't know, maybe 18 months or so. I think I've been doing this. It's been so gratifying to me, and also really intriguing to really dive into different terms and look at the mainstream version versus sort of what I have within my own mind. Today, we will be discussing the light body. We hear this a lot in so many different areas of ascension and of sort of the 5D realm. Whether you are looking into healing, or lucid dreaming, or past life regressions, astral travel, all of those sort of realms introduce this concept and talk a lot about the light body. And the last episode I did, 38, was on enlightenment. So if you missed that, you could pop over and listen to that after. This is very similar and running along the same theme and tangible description of light. And saying that, of course, we are light bodies. We are energetic beings. We have manifested this solid form here, made of matter, of earth, of stardust, of molecules, material, mass, whatever you want to look at that great organic vessel as. Yes, there is solidity to us. No, we are not transparent, glowing out light bulbs. However, like I spoke about before, light comes in a variety of flavors, right? Just like it comes in a variety of coloration. There is so much to light that we don't yet understand fully, or yet comprehend, or really share in a wide mainstream way. Hopefully we'll get there. But with this episode here, what I really want to do is sort of introduce that idea and bring with it not just this sort of vision of a light bulb body or a glowing alien sort of spirit that seems very different and very separate from our, physical vessel that we're here a part of, right? There are many ways that those two really can run parallel to each other and, in fact, intermingle and link on the molecular level, right? When we look down at a cell, we can see that it has an energy body, that it is radiating out energy. And again, just to sort of unwrinkle people who are thinking just light as in a light bulb or a ray of observable visual spectrum light. Yes, that's a form, but let's just get out of that a little bit. Let's remember that's a slice of a whole pie and not really tag too much into that, even though it's the most obvious version that we're most comfortable with and we're slammed in our face all the time. There's more to it than that. And light in itself is information. It is energy. It is observable on many different levels within the body. And again, I'm reminded and to say that you can see external energy as well, things like the aura around us. There's a lot of different technology that they use to observe body heat, to observe different spectrums of visual wavelength of light, right? So let's keep those all in mind as we're talking about the light body. If you think of like infrared cameras, right? That's a great example of different kind of spectrum of light that we're emitting out at all times. So the foundational sort of ground level explanation of the light body that I'd like to offer to people here is tied down to the ascension of humanity and the ascension of Earth, which I've done videos on as well, so I'll link those if you missed those. Those were early on in the start of this, maybe 5 or episode 10 or something, it was a while ago. But we are all in this great celestial universal dance and orchestration, moving into the different area on the dance floor. Different steps in music are needed in this different section of the dance or whatever. And along with that is coming changes to ourselves and our cells and our light body. And we are a carbon-based body right now. Our systems are carbon-based. And that structure and working had a beautiful, unlimited potentials in the 3D space and in third density working. And there's many linkings when you look into carbon chains and carbon and its atomic number of 6, and just the functions that carbon-driven systems look to do, and the way that I don't want to get too, I'm going to get into plant life and all these other things, but there's just a lot with the direction of light and the seeking of light sources for nutrients and energy, ATP processing and all that jazz, whatever photosynthesis you want to look at that as, the creation of energy, and the moving up the ladder, so to speak. You can really see, how that function works with plants, because they literally are taking in light and making energy and processing it, taking in, CO2 and processing it, linking it and sending out oxygen. They are a great way that we could say, hear and see light doing work. You know what I mean? Light being fuel, which it really, really is. And yes, we don't do photosynthesis in the same way that a plant does, but we still take in light information. We still incorporate it into our body. And we also, there's the food cycle, the chain of food, like you could remember from elementary school probably, with the processors, the plants, they take the energy and make the energy into an edible source like grass or a plant. Then you have the prey animals who come and eat, those grains and natural sources, the plant life and stuff like that. And then you have the apex predators who eat those animals who are processing the energy from the sun to the plants to that animal to the more complex animal, and then of course to the most complex animal as us, to the higher to eat. And that's how we gain energy. That's how we get our nutrients, because we don't do photosynthesis, so we can't get nutrients from light. However, I think we just get other forms of it, and we get different information and different instructions from it than a plant does. And that in itself, I say all of that to show sort of the gradual growth of a carbon-based body, right? And how the next step of growth after a carbon-based structuring is this more, after a 3D based shapes, right? We have things like platonic solids and 5-dimensional and the crystalline structuring, right? And this is how greater, higher complexities of join together, and create structure. So humans in the ascension and changing as we're moving through this great dance of the orchestration of the celestial body and the macro life, it is incorporating different spectrum of light over here, different energies. And it will and is triggering and spawning and allowing, giving space for these more crystalline bodies to start to take form. More light within us, more capability and capacity for greater reflective work, right? If you think of ourselves as prisms, right, with these shapes being creating depth and shape to you, right? They have corners in them, and light passes through them, right, and creates a spectrum of visible light through a prism. But if you think of all these different forms of light coming through your prism, which is incorporating and shining through many different types of light energy, right? The carbon-based bodies allow for this three-dimensional building, but crystalline bodies will allow for a more greater capacity and variety for different angles, basically, right? The lattice work and the structure in itself is more complex and more detailed, and therefore it has more vertices and vortex within it. It has more angles and points, you know? And when you think of the platonic solids, if you have, I'll make a visual too of these infographic, maybe to compare the two so you could see what I'm saying. But if you can imagine trying and to see this sort of prism from a 3D cube, and then imagining the kind of prism that is created instead with like the dodecahedron, you know, or the tetrahedron, or these other more complex platonic solids, the greater capacity for different spectrum of light and different shining and shadowing and mirroring and reflections available within that structure as well. And that's a metaphor, but also tangible visual to understanding about how carbon aligns to build things versus how we see other structures working that have more light to them. And it's interesting because you'll see carbon come together to form black, coal and things like that. And I don't want to get too much into things like graphene oxide and stuff like that. But I will say those, you know, that is the thinnest form of carbon chain, you know, and it's got very sharp edges. And it creates a very strict form, very sharp, very pointed and flat. And when we think of that in incorporation with what shadow and light really can mean to us, you can see how the carbon-based bodies are, you know, a lot more fertile ground for shadow and darkness and more stagnation, versus having a more five-dimensional crystalline structurings that allow for space and air and movement, diversity of angles. Creates a more transparent structure. Also, it's less I don't want to call it stable because it's not. Yeah, I'm grasping for words here, and I don't want to turn this video into too much of like a stream of consciousness kind of blab. So pardon me for that. But the point being is that when we have three-dimensional shapes versus these five-dimensional shapes, you can create more potentiality, obviously, when you have more dimensions to work with, right? When we remember that this also is an incorporation of light, then we could see how it illuminates one. It's involved with ascension. You have to have a seeking of truth and transparency and honorability in order to really call forth this evolutionary ding, you know. They love to say like switches, and they like to say little triggers cause these things. You know, it is like that, but it's information, it's intention, it's your desire and your inklings that that you should be following, you know. And when you do, and when you do that honest work, you will notice more clarity in your prisms, in your light body, right? And if we could really sort of take away this idea that the light body is just this thing that we're shining out, and to remember that, like a window pane, we are, our body is, and we are shining out our light, but we are also receiving in everybody else's light and great light from source, and everything else, you know. All of these spectrum of different informational pieces come through all different layers at all times. And the light body in itself is like called a light body, has been confused with that. It gets seen as glowing or bright sometimes, and colorations and all of these beautiful things, because we are contained in sort of like a see-through transparent window pane of sorts, an energetic metaphysical one, and we shine through it, or we don't, depending on what kind of energy alchemy you're doing, what your light and shadow work is, how clean you are, how much cleansing and clearing you do, how much honest shadow and light work you do, you know, the wax on, the wax off of your window panes in each energy center, because each one is a world of all of its own. Each one has a flavor that it casts out and sees the world with and interacts with all others with, just like all the systems. And I've been talking so much about that over on my other series, Energetic Systems, about mind, body, and spirit being these systems, and they are. And they each have their own window pane they see life through and they interact through. And there is a responsibility and a requirement of people who are seeking ascension and enlightenment to keep those window panes as clean as they can, so that they know their message is going out as honest as they intend, and that what they're receiving is coming through as clearly as they can at their capacity at that time. They're not adding to grime. They're not adding to fog. They're not adding dust and debris to the windows, or shadows, or curtains, or blinds. Oh my goodness, boarding it up. There is endless metaphorical workings here with this light body idea, if you allow it to be. And if you understand and hold responsibility for that, yes, you are. And what kind of light are you shining? How transparent are you with yourself, with others? You know, are you opaque? You know, this is an intro only, and this is for beginners, so I'm going to leave it there. I try to keep these videos under 20 minutes for comprehending consciousness, but I thought what a great follow-up to really sort of tack in the Enlightenment theme from 38, to really talk about the light body. And yes, it does literally mean that, but not as it's not as frivolous as it's made to be seen. Much deeper. And so I hope I really inspired you to think about that in that way, maybe do some inner cleaning or assessment. And yeah, hopefully tune in to me next time for another episode of Comprehending Consciousness, number 40. Who knows what I will be tackling next. But in the meantime, always find me on amariespeaks.com. You can check out my other series and meditations, energy work, over on YouTube and BitChute, or my Spotify podcast where I'm talking about all things introspection, spirituality, and happiness. Different content over on Spotify, not the same things I make videos of or blogs, so definitely, if you haven't checked that out, be sure to check that out. Follow me on Telegram if you use the platform. I put all my links to everything up there always. That's the best place to keep up with all the different projects and things I'm doing. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for your beautiful contribution to our collective. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video and care about these things. Oh, lastly, just to know, in the upcoming weeks, hopefully maybe before the end of the year, I will be putting together sort of an Ascension glossary or encyclopedia, mainly based off terms I've already talked about here on Comprehending Consciousness. But I plan to be continually adding terms and phrases to that. But it will be a collection available for PDF download or whatever in the coming weeks. So I'll have links to that on Telegram, offered probably on my website, so you could check it out over there in the weeks to come, or send me an email if you're interested in getting it when it's ready. So thank you so much again for joining me, and I will talk to you next time.